Let's talk about when trade dress is functional. This is a really important aspect to analyze to figure out if you have a valid trade dress, since functionality is an absolute bar to trade dress. Even if you can identify and distinguish your source, it's not valid trade dress if it's functional. So let's talk about what types of functionality you can have. The two major types are utilitarian and aesthetic functionality. So what do these things mean? Well, utilitarian refers to the design that is useful. So the image of the Propel bottle is to give you an example. So I don't know if you can see it, but the top of the bottle is a little bit differently shaped because this is a top that you can basically open with your teeth, which would be useful if you were, for example, running or biking and didn't have your hands free. So utilitarian functionality would bar that look from being trade dress. Aesthetic functionality, on the other hand, has to do with the design being something that other competitors need. So what is shown next to the word aesthetic is a black sole. So basically what I'm trying to suggest is it would be unfair for one manufacturer to be the exclusive one to make black-soled shoes, because that's something that consumers expect shoes to have. Now, it might help to think about the reasons for these. So for utilitarian aspects of design, one big issue of concern is that that's really the purpose of patents, to promote things that are useful. You may be wondering why it matters. Why can't we just give trademark protection? Well, one really important issue is that trademarks could last forever, whereas patents are limited in time. And this stems from the different constitutional basis. So with patents, we know that the prices for the product could be increased, but we consider that to be okay because it's only going to be for a short time. But if you're going to give trade dress protection and it's going to be more expensive forever, that doesn't seem like such a good trade-off. So that's one thing to think about. Now you may be wondering about aesthetic functionality. So let me give you two examples. What if only one manufacturer could make red shoes? Would that be fair to all the other manufacturers? And also, would it be fair to consumers who might have to pay a lot of money for a red shoe? Similarly, think about the little blue things, I guess they're usually blue, that you drop in for toilet bowls. They can also be clear. Now, I'm not saying you couldn't use another color, but is it fair for one company to use blue or white if that's really the color that consumers expect? Consumers don't really want a ton of other colors for their toilet bowl cleaner. They're accustomed to having that blue. Now let's think about some other rules on functionality. The first is whether it matters that there are alternatives. This is particularly important for utilitarian functionality. Does it matter that there's a different way of doing it, a different way of, for example, opening up a bottle? And the short answer is no. And if you think about the reason, it should make sense, because even if there's an alternative, if it's still functional and something that maybe should have been patented, you're still giving too much protection and overburdening society. Now, you might also wonder, could functional trade dress be valid and or registered? And again, the answer is no. Trade dress can never be functional, and you can never register anything that isn't valid trade dress. Registration gives you certain procedural benefits, but it's the same rules, whether it's something that is a common law trade dress or federally registered. And the last question is whether secondary meaning would help if a trade dress is functional. And the short answer is, again, no. So no for all three of these. Now for secondary meaning, remember this is about how consumers over time will associate the source with this particular trademark or trade dress. Now, why isn't that helpful? Well, it's because that's a whole separate issue from functionality. Functionality is a bar even if the mark identifies and distinguishes. So functionality is a tough thing to consider for trade dress and makes it a lot harder to get protection for a design for a good or service as opposed to a word mark or a logo. Hopefully that was a helpful overview.